People everywhere are starting to listen to him. He's going on French, British, Italian, Japanese television.
This is the Wide World of Weingarten.
Welcome back, Wide World of Weingarten. It is Thursday, January 6th, about 3 o'clock here in Los Angeles. Not a lot going on in the middle of this week for me, betting-wise, because there is no football. There is no baseball other than some Winter League stuff going on, which I haven't particularly been following this year. And, we don't have any more football until Saturday, I think. So, tomorrow I'll preview the FCS championship game and go over some of the NFL Week 18 stuff in more detail. But for today, just a couple notes on what's going on in the NFL right now for Week 18 betting stuff and what I have bet this week. The Eagles and the Cowboys have both clinched playoff spots before their game Saturday night, so it's essentially turned that game into a preseason game with expected extended backup play by both sides. The Cowboys also have some COVID issues, and it sounds like Micah Parsons and Tyron Smith, future Hall of Famer from USC, offensive tackle, are both already out. There's likely to be more players out with COVID before regular veteran sit-outs for the Cowboys anyway. We should see Gardner Minshew a lot instead of Jalen Hurts, and I don't consider that much of a downgrade. I was happy to grab 6.5 plus 245 this morning. With the Eagles, it's now plus 4.5. I see the money line dropping down to plus 170 or so. Some slightly higher numbers out there. If you could still get a plus 190 or so, if you have access to anywhere that's dealing higher than 170, I think it's a good play. Still at plus 190 or better. I would not be surprised to see the Eagles win this game outright. This game absolutely doesn't matter for the Cowboys. I think it matters for seeding, but you really can't do much at this point. So I took the Eagles here, and possibly with a win, a convincing enough win, you could see Nick Sirianni get a little slight bump in Coach of the Year consideration, depending on what else happens this weekend. Although I really have to say, I don't think Week 18, for the most part, outside of a crazy Cooper Kupp 200, 300 sort of yard receiving game, outside of something crazy like that, I can't particularly see any of the awards flipping in the final week of the season. But yeah, other notes for Sunday so far: Joe Burrow is sitting, likely to see a lot of sitting in the Bengals game, veteran sit-outs. 49ers secondary currently has COVID, but they are all expected to be cleared before game time, and Aaron Rodgers says he's playing for the Packers. I'm not sure how long he's going to play. It wouldn't surprise me if he played, a whole quarter, possibly multiple series, but I do expect him to start. I expect him to keep Jordan Love out of the game, if only for the pettiness of reminding Jordan Love that it's his team and he's coming back, and don't get your hopes up. I would say at this point, barring, we don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs with the Packers. Perhaps the Packers win the Super Bowl and Aaron Rodgers decides it's time to go out a champion and retire. You can never discount that. Or maybe they lose, like Dan Marino lost his last game 62-10 or whatever. And maybe Aaron Rodgers calls it quits. But I do expect Aaron Rodgers back in Green Bay next year at this point. Most likely to defend his MVP crown and play for another one. But in other NFL stuff to keep in mind this weekend, keep an eye on the weather in Buffalo. Could be an under there if we get a combination of bad weather and Buffalo backups. Mitch Trubisky expected to play potentially most of the game. They're 16-point favorites. So that's a situation I'm keeping an eye on there. I haven't bet it yet, though. Got to wait another day or so for weather updates. I added a Super Bowl future this week. I added it again today. I've talked about it a couple times, but good time to reinforce it here, and I bet it at some good numbers this week. The Saints 125 to 1 to win the Super Bowl, 65 to 1 to win the NFC. The Saints make the playoffs with a win over the Falcons, where they're currently 3.5-point favorites on the road, and the 49ers need to lose to the Rams, where they are currently 4.5-point underdogs, also on the road. Playing in LA, I might go to that game. Probably not, because I'll just be betting all afternoon. But I like to think I might go to that game. But yeah, the Saints won 125 to 1, 65 to 1 to win the NFC. You got to keep in mind, I guess, the Saints, they're 2-0 against Tom Brady. They shut him out 9-0 as recently as a couple weeks ago, and the Saints opened the season with a pretty convincing win over Green Bay, a game that was played in Jacksonville, but they held them to 3 points. Obviously, Jameis Winston was the quarterback of that game, but the story in their victories, their 2-0 record over the Bucs and their victory over the Packers, is their defense. The Saints have an elite defense, a defense that makes them good enough to hang with any NFL team, any given week, any given Sunday, regardless of if the quarterback is Ian Book or Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston. Taysom Hill hopefully being the guy we are focusing on here in the playoffs, but defense wins championships, and we saw the Bucs upset the Chiefs last year in the Super Bowl with a strong defense. If the Saints can sneak into the playoffs with a win and a 49ers loss this weekend, I think they could win 3 road games and cash that 65 to 1. I'm not super confident that 125 to 1 is in play. I don't really actually like betting Super Bowl futures in general, because you get that last leg, that Super Bowl leg, where anything can happen, and I don't like being stuck with a huge ticket that I now have to hedge in the Super Bowl. I much rather front load my bet with more money on the 65 to 1 to win the NFC. That way, if they do happen to win the NFC, I cash my bet and I get to watch the Super Bowl with that money already won, and I can do whatever I want with it. But yeah, I really think the Saints are a dangerous team, and defense wins championships. So if you have access to some big numbers on the Saints, it's a good spot to bet them going into Week 16. I think that's excuse me. I think that's the value. Then Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is in the news again today. First, because he tweeted his side of the story about what happened on Sunday on the sideline, and then the Bucs responded by cutting him, and the Daily Mail responded by releasing an exclusive story about Antonio Brown having a woman up in his hotel room on Saturday night before the game. So really, for me, what this all comes down to with Antonio Brown is that he is just a massive distraction for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And on the eve of the playoffs, with everybody's goal, everyone being focused on the same goal, and that's winning another Super Bowl and defending their Super Bowl title, the Bucs now have to answer questions and focus energy on Antonio Brown and Antonio Brown's antics, and it's good. They finally just said, you know what, we're going to cut him. And I get that they were squatting on him because they were worried that supposedly another team's going to sign him for the playoffs. But you know what? Let him be somebody else's problem at this point. If you're the Bucs, there's really only so much you could do. You got to just jettison and focus on the playoffs. I think it's not a good situation for the Bucs necessarily to have a distraction like this on the eve of the playoffs, and it goes back to what I've said a couple times about NFL is a unforgiving business, and you have to constantly be moving on from players, and the Bucs should have known not to bring Antonio Brown back in the first place. You never bring back crazy wide receivers with a laundry list of problems after you've won. He already contributed. He did what he needed to do. You got to move on. Bucs kept him around because Tom Brady wanted him, which is understandable. That Tom Brady gets what Tom Brady wants, but at this point, like I said, he's just a distraction, and you gotta move on. And the first question, if the Bucs lose in the wild card round, post game is going to be, how much was the Antonio Brown situation down the stretch a distraction to your preparations? So, it's best they got rid of him and they have a week to regroup. But it's unfortunate, the whole situation. Not surprising though. Then sports business. We haven't talked much about sports business on the show. It's something I would like to get into more. I've had a lot of comments about people wanting to hear more about the business of sports. There are more and more places reporting on this stuff, and there are deals happening all the time right now. So there's always a lot to talk about this week. So many things happened this week. I wanted to highlight a couple. Obviously, Topps being sold to Fanatics for $500 million, which is about three times their revenue. Is it was a pretty big deal. But there's some even bigger deals. Some even bigger news that happened this week. I wanted to highlight some of it. One of the top ones being that top NFL executive Christopher Halpin, the NFL's chief strategy and growth officer, the guy who oversaw the NFL's jump into legal gambling, is leaving the NFL to go work for Barry Diller at IAC as his new CFO. IAC owns a bunch of stuff. Some of the stuff you were probably more familiar with, they spun off Expedia, they spun off Match.com recently. I think they made like $3.9 billion on that Match.com spinoff. And Barry Diller is the IAC CEO. He's an elite operator in the media world. And I think the big thing that was overlooked here in a lot of the articles about this move is that IAC is a large minority stakeholder in MGM. I think they own 12% of the company. They bought it for about $1 billion a year ago, and their stake has appreciated by about 140% since then. But it looks like IAC via MGM is looking to get a lot more exposure to the U.S. retail gambling market, and they are picking off one of the best people from the NFL to lead that. So I thought that was a very interesting acquisition, personnel acquisition for IAC, and something to keep an eye on because they are a big investor in MGM. So I would expect this to bleed into MGM. I don't know how, but keep an eye on it. Then today, the big news this morning is that The Athletic announced that they have sold themselves to the New York Times for $550 million after failing to merge with Axios or go public via a SPAC or find any other buyer, really, because I know a whole bunch of sports books had the chance to purchase them and they all passed. They couldn't get the economics to work. No SPAC could get the economics to work, which is funny because SPACs are all about, making voodoo economics work. And so the New York Times, NYT, steps in here and decides that $550 million is a good price to for a unprofitable business. $550 million being about what The Athletic was valued at during their Series D round a year ago. So I know they were trying to get $750 million as recently as November, and their valuations at that point. So they ended up selling themselves at a pretty big discount to the New York Times, and they think they'll reach profitability in 2023. Suspicious. I'm not sure they will, especially because their entire business model is centered around getting you to sign up for $1 and hoping you forget to turn off your auto renewal. So forgive me if I don't think that's a strong business model. I mean, it is a business model, that is true, but a strong one is up for debate. And none of this is to say that I necessarily hate or dislike The Athletic as a publication. They really do have something for everybody, especially at $1. For example, I personally think Andy McCullough is the best writer in sports, and he happens to be one of their feature writers. So it's very much worth $1. It's not necessarily worth the auto renewal price, whatever it might be. I always try to cancel immediately. But I'm skeptical that this is a purchase that was worth $550 million. You could not really convince me to buy a unprofitable business for really any amount of money. But congratulations, Carlos Slim, owner of the New York Times, has most likely purchased himself a wonderful tax write-off. On top of all this news, and I am telling you this was a rather busy news week and news day, but on top of all this news, New York announced legal sports betting will go live on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. So congratulations, if you live in the state of New York, you can legally bet on sports as of Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Although it will be interesting to see how books manage promotions and everything in New York. You can't write off promotions as an operator in New York as you can in other states, so it'll be interesting to see if they have promotions in New York, especially with the 51% tax rate, which is also kind of crazy. But you could potentially see a situation where they don't have active bonus programs in New York, but they do in New Jersey, and they increase them in New Jersey because the economics of busing bettors from New York to New Jersey might make more sense for operators given the New York tax environment. So I could definitely see some interesting situations coming out of the New York, New Jersey area with both states competing for the same customers. But this is just sort of to highlight the need for cross state or cross border pools, federal at the once we get some federal sort of guidelines or some more federal, not necessarily enforcement, trying to think a better word than guidelines, but once the government is more allowing of interstate gambling, there's no reason that states like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut can't share the same pools. I think cross-state pools and sharing of pools is going to have to happen in the long term for there to be profitability in this business. Especially currently, if you think about it right now, a state like New York, states like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, that's multiple layers of bureaucracy for the bets in different states, and eventually you're going to just have to streamline that because it's just too many levels of bureaucracy and too much going on between the player and profitability. I talked about Fanatics buying Topps earlier this week. The New York Post had a follow-up article with some more details about Fanatics. I thought there was some interesting news in that via the New York Post. Fanatics passed on buying PointsBet last year. I don't necessarily blame them, but according to the New York Post, Fanatics is looking to build their own book organically or lease licenses in various states from other operators, which I think is probably more likely. Although I think this is probably just them saying that because they know that they could sit around for 3 to 6 more months and buy one of these books, if not potentially 2 of these books, at a discount to the current market prices. So I would expect Fanatics to pull a similar move to the Topps deal, where they kind of force a book to sell to them at a price they think is reasonable. I am skeptical of their ability to get licensed, especially after they lost their bid to get a New York license, teaming with Barstool and Jay-Z. I don't think Jay-Z can pass licensing in New York or New Jersey. I think obviously Fanatics knows more about the licensing procedures and regulations and everything than I do, but I just can't see Jay-Z getting licensed, so I don't know what they're thinking, because what they're thinking and what they're saying don't necessarily add up. And I really do think they're gonna likely have to acquire a sports book, if not multiple sports books, to get the position that they think they want to be in, which is the largest sports book operator in the United States. That's very, very large aspirations. Although I also wanted to point out that something else from the article that was interesting, that Fanatics now has the MLB apparel and the baseball card license from the MLBPA and the league. So there's now growing momentum behind the idea that Fanatics is going to work directly with Major League Baseball to create a consumer streaming package, and essentially the era of regional sports networks will come to an end, which has ramifications for Comcast and Sinclair and a lot of teams that rely on those TV contracts, although obviously a Fanatics centric consumer streaming package would most likely make up for the loss of TV revenue from the regional sports networks, and also integration with gambling products. So there's a lot going on with baseball, not just with the union negotiations, but with Fanatics in the background trying to sort of get a larger position in baseball cards and betting and apparel and everything. So there's various different battles going on all over the world of baseball right now for the profitability centers of the game. So that's the business update of business of sports update for the day. I'm gonna take a break real quick, and we'll come back and wrap up with everything else that's going on. So be back. 655. All right, coming back from break. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back. Just took a break. Wide World of Weingarten. It is Thursday, January 6th. The PGA Tour is back. The first event of the year, Tournament of Champions, is just underway from the Plantation Course at Kapalua. Daniel Berger currently leading the field at 6 under. Garrick Higo just finished his round at 5 under. A couple other guys contending for the first round lead. Nothing too exciting. I decided to sit this event out. I wanted to just to kind of get a look at what the guys look like coming off the end of season break, see whose form has changed, if anything. And like last time we saw John Rahm, for example, he was rage quitting and shooting 7 over against easy European Tour fields in Spain, where he was like a 3-1 favorite. So I'm content to mostly just sit the first round out and jump in via live betting if I need some golf action this weekend. Tonight the Clippers are back in action. I bet the Suns minus 10.5 versus the Clippers. I mentioned I think the Clippers are kind of playing a skeleton crew and skeleton coaching and administration staff at the moment. They're currently on the road in Phoenix. Suns are 10.5 point favorites, creeping up to 11. And I got my eye on the Grizzlies tonight. They're up to 13-point favorites over Detroit, over the Pistons. Ja Morant is probably a year away from a potential MVP run. Big fan of his. I was tempted to bet some MVP this week at 45-1, but I think I'm a year early, so I didn't jump in on that market. But I am on the Suns minus 10.5 tonight. It's good play up to 11. We have PGA, like I said, from Kapalua from the Plantation Course, and we'll update that tomorrow if there's anything going on to look at and bet into the weekend. And then I'm looking forward to another podcast, Spanky's podcast, Be Better Betters. Alan Boston was his guest this week. Alan Boston is usually an elite guest on any show he's on, whether it's Spanky or Gill's show or Brian Bolek's podcast, the Bebo Knows podcast, the most important podcast in all of gambling Twitter, on all of gambling Twitter. But yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to what Alan Boston has to say. And if I hear anything good, I will report back as I tend to do. So thank you for listening. Go Suns. Go Suns minus 10.5, minus 11. Go Saints. Go Rams. Need the Rams to beat the 49ers for the Saints futures. And yeah, that's what I got today. So thanks for listening.